vote, your voice, your vote, your choice.
There comes a point in each person's life where they are tasked with an important decision. A decision that may affect not only them, but also their country.
Change gon' come, change gon' come, oh, yes it will.
A decision to keep things the way they are, or a decision that will bring meaningful change. We choose change to provide wider access to homes and land ownership, for good health care.
There's a travel advisory issued by the U.S. State Department advising of the poor state of our hospitals and the prohibitive costs associated with accessing private health care.
And access to quality education from early childhood to the tertiary level. A change to decrease crime and give our youths a chance. A change from unfulfilled promises to renewed trust. A change from corruption to good governance.
I were in your position, I would take for myself and hand over to someone else who is not compromised.
We choose a Jamaica that is run democratically, not autocratically. We choose a Jamaica where if you break the law, you pay the price, no matter who you are. If, like me, you truly want a better future for all Jamaicans, not just a few, then make the decision to choose change for yourself, for your family, and for Jamaica.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today at this morning's press conference. Cleveland and I will provide some additional information, some required updates and responses to developments across the weekend, as well as to continue to present to the public and the various subgroups that make up the Jamaican population here and abroad, as well as focusing on some segments of the electorate to keep them focused on the correct and appropriate information. As we are now 48 hours away from a new dawn in Jamaica, the elections voting will begin at 7 a.m. on Wednesday, September 3rd, and by 2 p.m. we will have a new PM. So we just want to confirm to our base, our supporters, and to those persons who have been indicating and are making up their minds that the proposal advanced by the People's National Party and by Mark Golding are better proposals for your life over the next 4 to 5 years. Before we get into the details, I'd just like to bring our attention to today's Gleaner editorial, which is entitled Terrorist Bomb Threats. I will read the first few sentences and elaborate on them briefly. It reads, "It is deeply unfortunate that Horace Chang, the National Security Minister, without offering evidence, accused the People's National Party of responsibility for a series of bomb threats at government offices on Friday. Dr. Chang neither gets nor deserves a pass that he acted in his political role as a General Secretary of the governing Jamaica Labour Party. He doesn't have the luxury of alternating skins 4, especially when addressing critical matters of national security, including in this case one of the island's major political parties, of behavior akin to terrorism or something close thereto. If Dr. Chang was briefed to this effect by the police, he should say so, in which case we look forward to the constabulary quickly arresting and prosecuting not only the, quote, PNP elements claimed by Dr. Chang to be responsible for Friday's despicable act, but those who instructed them and on whose behalf they worked. Now, we had responded to this development during our press conference on Friday. 72 hours having passed, there are neither any developments, any announcements from the Jamaica Constabulary Force or a related authority for law enforcement, nor has there been a retraction by the Jamaica Labour Party General Secretary whether or not he was wearing that skin or the skin of the Minister of National Security. But as the Gleaner editorial outlined, still the most respected source of news coverage in the Gleaner editorial has outlined the behavior is reprehensible and unacceptable. I move from that to note that the Minister of Local Government, the candidate for the Jamaica Labour Party in West Kingston, has also repeated a phrase that has already gotten the significant pushback by members of the public, including supporters of his party. The claim that they, whoever they are, will not surrender Jamaica. The word surrender is an interesting word, especially this close to general elections. One only has to surrender something that they have taken hold of, either illegally or criminally. It also, I believe, speaks to the mind of the person who has not only uttered it once, but now uttered it on several occasions in front of a base of his party's supporters. And one can only wonder if incidents that have been happening across the island, including in East Central St. Catherine, are related to the charge by the deputy leader of the Jamaica Labour Party regarding not surrendering Jamaica. And I won't, for the purposes of today's conversation, mention what was previously mentioned on Friday, or what many Jamaicans across social media are speaking about, the concept of being Jamaican just on the basis of being born in Jamaica. I find it weird that a team that can't either spell Jamaica or understand how nationality is achieved are now speaking about retaining some hostage grip on Jamaica. But I'd like to introduce to my left Cleveland, who will also be co-anchoring this morning's press conference, and again to thank everyone for joining us this morning as we share with the public our readiness for the September 3rd election and present a final message of confidence and resilience to the Jamaican people, those who are Jamaican because they were born here, as well as those who are naturalized Jamaicans, and those, of course, on the voters list. Cleveland?
Thank you, Raymond. Good morning, Jamaicans, and thank you for joining us for our final press conference ahead of our national broadcast this evening on Television Jamaica at 8 p.m. We want to take the opportunity to reiterate that our policies and our programs have been designed to ensure that every Jamaican can have an opportunity to experience and sustain upward socioeconomic mobility. Our campaign spokesperson chair, Mrs. Donna Scott Motley, usually characterizes our manifesto as one that is wrapped in love. And indeed it is, because when we designed our programs, we did that with the intent to ensure that all Jamaicans can have a better life. And that is why we have put together a suite of policy prescriptions that will not be performative, that will not tinker with the issues, but will solve them in a real and tangible way. And I want to use this opportunity to remind the Jamaican people that when they go to cast their vote on election day, that they should cast it for an improvement in the education outcomes in this country. And to that end, we want to remind you of our RIDE program. Our RIDE program is geared towards providing relief and support for vulnerable parents and children who are based in deep rural areas, who are unable to afford the transportation costs, or unable to meet, rather, the transportation costs to send the child to school. And we have designed this program with the understanding that there needs to be a mixture of transportation modalities that are provided for our students. So whilst we are in support of a structured and coordinated bus program, we also recognize that there are deep rural areas with interior roads where a bus is not appropriate to navigate the hilly terrain in those areas. And in that case, it would necessitate a smaller transportation vehicle, a car, a taxi. So we are very firm and confident that we have designed the RIDE program and that it will be an effective resolution to the challenges that our rural parents face in that side, in those areas of the country. We also want to remind you of our EASE program, ensuring adequate sustenance for education. And this is geared towards providing at least one hot meal per day for all students who need it. We recognize that many times absenteeism is elevated because parents cannot afford the lunch money to send the child to school. And we are saying, send the child to school and we will ensure that the adequate nutrition that is required for effective learning, for the teaching and learning process to be carried out effectively, is done, because we will provide the child with one hot meal per day. And we're doing that with the intent over time to move towards providing breakfast as well. And I know some persons will say, but this is being done by the PATH program. But if you recognize and understand what the real challenges on the ground are, then you will appreciate that there are many children in Jamaica who do not qualify for the PATH program, given the rigidities in the metrics to qualify for it, but they're also struggling to afford a meal per day. And that is what we are geared towards resolving. A major proposal that we have made is the adjustment of the income tax threshold. And there are some on the other side who want to pour doubt on it. We are very confident that we will be able to finance the adjustment of the income tax threshold to $3.5 million. We will relax the primary surplus in the budget, and we can do that. If you examine the fifth schedule of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, and you examine further the equation that is embedded in that section of the Act, which was put into law by the last PNP government to ensure a stable debt reduction trajectory, it tells you that given that we are expected to meet the 60% debt to GDP target by the end of this fiscal year, we can reduce the primary balance, the primary surplus that is, and which will create additional fiscal space to the tune of around $70 billion, which can comfortably finance the income tax adjustment. And we have always said that we will also grow the economy at substantial levels that will generate organic growth in tax revenues to finance the adjustment. We did not pull this initiative out of the hat. We sat, we engaged with stakeholders, and we looked at the realities in the country. And the reality is that the middle class in Jamaica is being wiped out. And the reality as well is that Jamaica is heavily taxed. When you look at our tax to GDP ratio relative to other countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, then you will appreciate that Jamaica ranks among the countries with the highest tax to GDP ratio. And against that backdrop, We appreciate that the inflation movement over the last 5 years has reduced the purchasing power of many individuals who earn up to 3.5 million, and even those who earn above. But given that they earn at the lower end of the salary scale, then they are bearing the brunt of the cost of living pressures. So when we will adjust the income tax threshold, we're doing so with our teachers in mind. We're doing so with our nurses, our police officers, members of the Jamaica Defense Force. We are thinking of you. We're thinking about the public servants, who majority of them earn within the region of $3 million to $4 million. You will benefit significantly from our adjustment. This is not a promise. This is a commitment. It will take effect on April 1, 2026. And we will do it without raising taxes, without imposing any new tax, and without adjusting upward any existing tax rate. We will do so because we want you to have more money in your pocket so that you can live a decent life and you can afford a quality of life that is appropriate for all Jamaicans, that affords them the dignity. So, go ahead. We also want to take the opportunity to address what we have taken note of, a promise. And I leave it at that, just a promise from the Jamaica Labour Party to raise the minimum wage to $32,000. We believe that the minimum wage is something that should never be politicized, given the delicacies surrounding an adjustment of it. It requires a careful balancing act to ensure that you are taking into account the implications on both sides of the coin. So the PNP, as expressed in our manifesto on page 31, is committed to a livable wage. And this is not a commitment that we will not carry out. We will carry out all our commitments in our manifesto. But we are particularly passionate about this one because we appreciate the need to ensure that Jamaicans live with dignity and that they can afford the opportunity to experience and sustain upward socioeconomic mobility. So as is expressed in our manifesto, we will establish a livable wage commission that will facilitate the process of consultation and consensus building to arrive at a livable wage for Jamaicans. We will not do it in a way that circumvents, that avoids consultation, because we are acutely aware of the implications on both sides of the coin.
The interesting thing, as I pick up from Cleveland, that's a perfect segue to the point I'm about to make. As all of you know, all Jamaicans know, we have had a series of 3 political debates executed by the Jamaica Debates Commission. And I use this opportunity to thank the Jamaica Debates Commission for its continued investment in strengthening Jamaica's democratic traditions. In the social issues debate, the former Minister of Labour, Pernell Charles Jr., spoke. He mentioned nothing about adjustments to the minimum wage. In the economic issues debate, the former Minister of Finance, Favour Williams, participated, and she mentioned nothing about an adjustment in the minimum wage. That debate also had a chairman, as is, well, we've heard he's been removed, of the Jamaica Labour Party campaign, Dr. Christopher Tufton. He mentioned nothing about the increase in the minimum wage. The Minister of Information, or the former Minister of Information, was also in that debate. She mentioned nothing. But more importantly, Andrew Holness was also at that debate. and mentioned nothing about any changes to the minimum wage. As a matter of fact, he was complaining throughout the debate and very unassertive and very ambiguous on any issue of policy he tried to cover. So Cleveland is correct. This is late in the day, clutching at the straw to try and salvage a dying campaign. The people of Jamaica are wiser than that, and we are confident in your wisdom. Another matter I'd like to address quickly is that since our last press conference, there have been the publication of poll results, which poll results show that the People's National Party are at least 3.1 percentage points ahead of our opponents. I say at least because the period in which the polls were conducted included the parish rally in St. Mary and the social issues debate, about which I've already spoken. And these results in the new polls, we believe, reflect the bounce coming out of those activities. The polls, however, preceded the economic policy debates. It preceded the Portmore rally on Saturday. It also preceded the leadership debate where our party leader, Mark Golding, distinguished himself exemplary as the country had expected he would have done. And it also preceded last night's mass meeting in Sam Sharp Square in Montego Bay. We believe that those events which have occurred after the last polls were conducted will also add to the bounds that is now being reflected within the, shall I say, the fortunes of the People's National Party. I think it is the sheer weight of that fact that would have led to some of the diatribe, that the nonsense that we heard as a country from Old Harbour Roundabout last evening, and the statement about not surrendering Jamaica. But more important than that is the clarity that the People's National Party has maintained on our message, some of which have been reiterated just now by Cleveland. And I want to say to all voters that as we saw on Friday, the men and women of the police force and related law enforcement agents are serious about ensuring that September 3 happens in a state of safety and security where voters of all age groups and all stripes and intention will be able to make it safely from their homes to their respective polling stations, cast their ballot, one ballot to one voter, same ballot to same voter, in free and fair elections under the supervision of CAFE and other observers. We are also confident that attempts to derail, such as happened on Friday, or happened after our peaceful and successful meeting in Sam Sharp Square, will be unsuccessful. What am I speaking about? Last night, after our Sam Sharp Square rally, some of our buses were targeted by people clad in green, throwing stones. One young lady, at least one, is now hospitalized as a result of that act of violence. We're seeing a pattern of intimidation as well in southern St. James and in southern St. Elizabeth, where young people, mostly young men, are being targeted and arrested without a clear reason being given for their incarceration. And that persons are being visited in their communities where police officers are asking for them by name. I use this opportunity to remind Jamaica that the Commissioner of Police, Dr. Kevin Blake, has made it pellucidly clear that the men and women of the constabulary force must act in the professional manner and standard that our country in 2025 expects of them. We make no further statement nor accusation, just to say that the seeming habit of persons being visited in their communities and pictures being shown of them on telephones, and even in one case that I am very closely aware of and which I am monitoring, the individual said that the police officer did a better job of canvassing his intention to vote on Wednesday than the canvassers that had been deployed by either party to go into that community and to visit him. I'd also like to speak to an issue, though I don't want to elevate it, because my granny said, if you follow a fool, you turn bigger fool yourself. Where in my own constituency, my opponent has been wont to be on his public address system, making very errant and dastardly accusations of, he believes, theft while I served in St. Elizabeth. And I served in St. Elizabeth up until February of 2016. What he's actually saying of the men and women of the police force is that the constabulary is the most lethargic in the world. Because if there was a case to investigate, and 9 years later, someone who has been as public as I have been over that time, they can't confirm and act upon these accusations being bandied about by one person and one person alone, my opponent, then it would be a serious accusation levied at the feet of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. But as one constituent said to me, when you are MP, get rid of all of the waste, including the leading waste man and the leading waste manufacturer. I use this opportunity, therefore, to recommit to Jamaica that the 63 candidates assembled by the People's National Party are Jamaicans by birth. We are patriots. We're sons and daughters of the soil. We understand that our role in these elections is to campaign vigorously and within the law, and to ensure that upon our success, we represent the people who elect us with every fiber of our body, with our hearts and with our souls, because we are committed to bring to life Mission Jamaica Love and to bring to the leadership of government Mark Jefferson Golding, so that Jamaica can be transformed during his tenure, and that this country can become not just the country, the land of our birth, but the land within which our dreams can be achieved, our families will be safe, our children will be better educated, our elderly and sick better taken care of, our men and women allowed to move in stride to achieve their own industrious results and benefit in a land of their birth that centralizes them, that honors them, where no longer our taxi operators and our security guards will be ridiculed as political jokes and banter, but will be honored and dignified and elevated by an administration led by Mark Golding. To voters going out, therefore, please do so swiftly, carry your identifications. If you don't have a current voter ID and your name is on the voters list, you will still be permitted to cast your ballot. You will be asked to do an affirmation or to swear on. There is information at all polling stations that captures unique data. You may be asked some questions. Answer the questions clearly and respectfully. And we are also confident that the men and women that have been recruited by the Electoral Office of Jamaica as poll clerks and presiding officers and other election day officials will act in the manner of their training and will eschew their own political intentions and be open and clear, communicating to the voter so that our voters are able to put their X beside the head, and some may do otherwise, but that they will be allowed to do so without any intimidation or any overreaching by instructions that are weighted one way or the other.
Thank you, Raymond. And whilst you're speaking, I got a message from a friend who's a security guard, and he asked if there's anything in there for me in the manifesto. And I thought it's, again, a perfect opportunity to remind the Jamaican people that a signature proposal from us in this election cycle, which will be done, is the removal of taxes on overtime pay. And we appreciate, to my friend who is listening to me, we appreciate that majority of the income that is earned as a security guard comes from the overtime that is done. And we are committing to you to remove taxes from overtime pay. You will have more money in your pockets to spend in the economy. There will be greater levels of economic activities being stimulated. The government will be able to recover funding through its indirect taxes. So we are not of the view that our proposals, our programs, and what we will do will be done in a fiscally reckless way. So we will give back $35,000 per month from our income tax adjustment. We will give you back money through our removal of taxes on overtime pay. We'll also remove taxes from tips as well, because we appreciate that the country has gone through a period of fiscal consolidation, of belt tightening. We have made the difficult choices, particularly in the last PNP government. The country has achieved a degree of macroeconomic stability, largely an outcome of the difficult fiscal and economic reforms that were pursued and implemented by the PNP, for which we paid the political price in 2016 to get the country where it is at today with respect to that stability. And we are committed to safeguarding it. We enhanced the fiscal rules to safeguard that stability. The downward movement of the debt to GDP ratio is an outcome of what we did to make it legally binding on any government to ensure that the ratio reaches 60% by a particular legislated timeline. I also note, before we field questions from the media, I've seen this nonsensical argument in social media that PNP is relying on JLP's economy to fund its proposals, which indicates that the economy is somehow doing well. And I want to put on my economist cap right now. There's a difference between macroeconomic stability and the real economy. What the country has been able to achieve over the last 10 years is stability in the macroeconomy, which means that certain indicators are stable and are moving in a positive direction, i.e. debt to GDP ratio. I just said why the debt to GDP ratio is where it's at today, largely an outcome of the legislation that the PNP put in place to force any government, PNP or JLP, to get the ratio to where it is at today. NIR improving, a sign of stability. Inflation that is managed by the independent central bank, not by cabinet, not by the wholeness government, the independent central bank. It was the PNP that started the work to move towards inflation targeting to give the bank the independence. The JLP came to office in 2016, saw it on the books, and did the right thing, continued where the PNP left off in 2016. But the real economy is different from macroeconomic indicators. The real economy is that part of the economy that affects you in a tangible way. It's about prices. It's about output. It's about growth in the economy. It is about the state of our industries. And if you want a good picture of what the economy looks like in terms of the state of our industries, look no further than the dismal growth rate of the wholeness-led government. Since they have been in office in 2016, over the last 9.5 years, they have grown the economy by less than 2%. That is unacceptable, and that cannot give you the income that you need and the quality of life to afford you the dignity that every single Jamaican needs. So let's make it absolutely clear that the real economy is different from what we talk about macroeconomic indicators. Macroeconomic indicators do not give you a comprehensive picture of the health of the economy. And with that, we'll open.
Just before we open for questions, quick note, we've already seen in this past week where the Electoral Office had to come publicly very quickly to declare to the public that a document being circulated which bore their marks and logos, or what looked very close to it, was actually fake. Regrettably, we live in a period where desperation is practiced by persons in otherwise high places, and we are also asking that persons, for the correct information, go directly to the website of the Electoral Office of Jamaica. But for the purposes of this press conference, we're asking the public to go to PNP Jamaica. That's Jamaica PNP, at Jamaica PNP, and on Instagram, and also on Facebook, and also on YouTube and TikTok. The same handle for curated, correct, and clear information. We also have published an infographic that indicates our hotlines for persons to call, and our candidates also have direct numbers and handles for persons to get information on voting day. And we'd like to also acknowledge that there is a query feature on the EOJ website where persons can go, put in their full name and their date of birth, and the results will show you where your polling station is and where what your constituency is and where in the constituency your polling station is. We had to respond to these because since we've been here, these are pointers coming in from persons watching at home or listening in on IRI FM. With that, we now open the floor for your questions. Just say your name and the media house that you're from.
Thank you so much. Kelisha Williams from Television Jamaica. Just going back to the point about the minimum wage proposal by the Jamaica Labour Party, you said earlier that in the manifesto, well, you pointed to the manifesto saying that you, regarding to the point about earning a livable wage, there may be some level of ambiguity from persons, listening on, especially minimum wage earners, having heard that yes, we'll have consultation. While that is important, but wondering how their needs will be prioritized and what exactly is a livable wage, because the JLP is giving them numbers. Mm-hmm. What assurance can you give those persons at home listening, wondering what is the PNP's proposal, what will be a livable wage for them? Thank you.
I tell you something interesting. The amount to which the JLP says they intend to raise the minimum wage falls smack within the same range that we will be giving back to people when we raise the income tax threshold to $3.5 million. Imitation is the best form of a compliment. So the fact that they are bandering about the same figure basically that we have assured the public can be afforded is their way somewhat tangential, obtuse even, to accept that the data presented by the party president in the leadership debate was correct. Recall that when Mark Golding stated what the current ratio was in terms of debt to GDP, the Prime Minister was caught unaware. He didn't have a clue. So now that he and he alone, not his finance minister, not his labor and social security, roughly the same figure, I think he has been briefed, realized his information was incorrect, and as I said earlier, is clutching at straws. What's the difference with the concept of a livable income? As Cleveland pointed out, the macroeconomic data tells of the general health. It's a headline. But for the consumer, for the household, for the people who make up the families across Jamaica, that headline statistic doesn't mean anything to them if their purchasing power is eroded. So the combination of proposals we're putting forward, non-removal of the taxes on overtime, the RIDE program to do a subsidy for transportation for families in rural Jamaica or families across Jamaica who need it, the EASE program, which provides a hot meal, at least one, per day per student who needs it across the public education sector. The strengthening of PATH and other programs will augment what wage persons at that level of the economy are being paid. So the concept of a livable wage is when you consider all the factors that a household needs, that a citizen needs, the ability to go to a health center and not to be sent to another one, or to go to the hospital and not have to sleep for days on a wheelchair before they can be triaged to ascertain the extent of what is making them unwell. The fact that they can move freely and their children can get to school 5 days a week, and there are other programs to augment their education outcome. That's the concept of livability, or we can borrow a term from my brethren them in the Rastafari faith. It's about enhancing the overall livity across the nation. So yes, he did throw out a specific number, a specific figure, which oddly enough mirrors the figure he criticized could not have been achieved. So thanks, Mr. Holness, for confirming to us what we already knew, that our data was accurate, our research was accurate, and that the Jamaican people have been gravitating to the overall improvements that will be provided to them when on September 3 this year, 48 hours from now, they put their X beside their head on their individual ballots and bring to office the People's National Party and a new Prime Minister. And forgive me for saying it again, Kalisha, new PM by 1 p.m.
And Kalisha will add as well, we are of the view that the optimal way to adjust the minimum wage is through a commission that requires and engages in consultation. Because one can appreciate that there are delicacies on both sides of the coin. There will be implications. And we don't think that it should be politicized in the way as a desperation tactic to win an election, as the Jamaica Labour Party is characterizing it as, is portraying it to be. We think that you need a series of consultation. You need to engage with the stakeholders because there can be serious ramifications. And we are committed to that process of consultation.
Just a quick follow-up. Based on where you sit now, I understand the implications, but in terms of, say, the People's National Party forms the next government, in terms of where you're going, what you're looking at right now in terms of the minimum wage, I know you don't want to give figures, but in terms of minimizing all the risks, what would you say would be like a reasonable amount to increase the minimum wage by over a 4-year period, per se?
Well, we are of the view that an increase in the minimum wage must be consistent with the movement of inflation, because inflation erodes the purchasing power. So as inflation moves throughout the economy over time, we think that it necessitates an adjustment in minimum wage. So we will be guided by data, we'll be guided by the inflation outlook, we will be guided by consensus among stakeholders. We'll not be guided by an attempt to win an election because of political desperation, because a prime minister knows that his time is coming to an end.
Any other questions?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Giovanni White from IRFM, of course.
You're like the fifth Giovanni that across electronic media.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
But no one knows me much as yet.
Well, they do know.
They do know. My question to you is, throughout this campaign, the importance and the role of the political ombudsman has been very, very a great question. More so, your party has faced criticism in regards to statements you've made over the campaign trail. But I also want to ask you, based on Robert Morgan's comment last night at the rally.
Which ones in particular?
And I'll quote.
I was elsewhere.
Well, I understand, but I will quote for you. His words were, "Me hear Damien Crawford all over the media, but him couldn't come a Spanish Town with him clown show because Spanish Town vanished clown. What is your comment on that?
It's perhaps not a coincidence that their party color is green, and green is a global color that symbolizes envy. You had to clarify which Morgan you were speaking about. When somebody says Damien or Crawford, there is no doubt in the nation as to which Damien or Crawford you're speaking about. That Morgan still a keep is my first response. My second response is consistent with the diatribe, the garbage, the nonsense, the rubbish, the waste that is being spewed. We're elevating it now because I'm sure no one watching heard it, and I appreciate you asking the question because you reminded me that there is a Robert Nesta Morgan, but I just never know him did still a keep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes. Mr. Price, you mentioned earlier about an attack yesterday. Can you say whether or not there was any reports were made to the police or the political ombudsman?
Oh, yes, the substantive question about the political ombudsman. Let me answer it. There are certain things, just as Cleveland explained, when you look on an economy, you look on the rate of inflation, you look on the net international reserves, you look on the debt to GDP ratio. Similarly, there are certain things that you look on when you are assessing the strength and health of a democracy. You don't look on the individuals who occupy positions from time to time. You look on the institutions which last generations to generation. One of those institutions is the Office of the Political Ombudsman, a commission of parliament backed up by statute, by legislation, that for many election cycles, persons knew that the occupant of the office, the individual who held the office, would be the referee, the umpire, if you will, that will say, hey, candidate A, that's not kosher. Retract, withdraw. Party A, candidate A has not yet retracted or withdrawn. Party A's leader must then act. The fact that the Jamaica Labour Party has eroded, defunded, diminished the value of that institution to make it amorphous, that has caused serious harm and injury to the brand of another institution that safeguards democracy, the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. And then when you juxtapose that with the often repeated remark, we will not surrender Jamaica, a reasonable person would ask, is this a part of the plan? To foil our democracy, to foil our standards, remove the political ombudsman, bury it in ambiguity, and then practice this kind of reckless politics, where yesterday in East Central St. Catherine, for example, a worker, a female worker, was handing out voters' guides. Someone notified my opponent where she was. My opponent drove down on her. There are videos across social media. I'll share one with you at the close of this morning's press conference, where he's up in her face, microphone in hand, intimidating her, goading her, asking her why she handing out voters' guides for a criminal organization. In his own words, not mine, not hers. Because I have asked, once we recognize that my opponent is a stalker who consistently stalks my campaign, I've said it to our workers, whenever he comes, record him, video him. In a case reported yesterday to the head of St. Catherine South, who dispatched a unit to aid the said party worker, the close protection officer assigned to my opponent is also seen in a menacing way charging at the party worker. Who do I report that to this morning? An amorphous grouping? Because the Electoral Commission of Jamaica is already focused on its tremendous primary mandate to safeguard the procedures and processes of Wednesday. So I join the rank of Jamaicans who are saying, then that's why them did do away with the office of the political ombudsman, so them your things you can go along without any checks and balances being made. So the injured person traveling on the bus yesterday who's been hospitalized, that report has been made. And I am aware of other reports that have been made, not just to the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, in which somewhere there is the activities being carried out that were once the remit of the Office of the Political Ombudsman. But in the example I have given with East Central St. Catherine, our candidates are advised to report to Party Central, and in a situation of emergency, such as yesterday in Christian Gardens, where residents called me, not knowing the man that had charged that the worker was a police officer, my opponent's CPO, but just said, Mr. Price, send police quick because a man where I walk with Terry Long just pull gun pan one of the PNP woman them. It's despicable. It belongs in the Carboniferous era, way back in human evolution. And God is still God, you know, and nobody escapes him or his judgment. And we are a praying party. We are the people's national party. We know the nation that they're born in that gives them their national identity. And we have never, going back to 1944 with universal adult suffrage, we have never attempted to diminish the importance of universal adult suffrage and people's right to vote. We were not the party that said, if we don't win on election day, we're going to lock down Jamaica tighter than a sardine can. We were not the party that said we will never surrender Jamaica. We were not the party that said I'm going to stand up at crossroads and sit downtown. We have always been the party to say vote for the PNP. For sure, put your ex beside the head. But we don't intimidate and we don't violate, and we will never start doing that.
Do you have questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm a correspondent of Japanese newspaper called Yomiuri Shimbun, and I would like to ask about the foreign affairs. As the poll have shown that your party you had a positive result towards your party, but I wanted to know what kind of change will you bring to that in terms of foreign affairs if you were to take power? Mm-hmm. And also, I'm especially interested in what kind of relationship do you want to build between United States and China, which is like the major economic power that has strong influence on, you could have, well, it's already having strong influence on your country.
All right, thank you very much. And welcome to Jamaica. Welcome to the headquarters of the People's National Party. And if you never know, so Jamaica, little about Talawan, we name gone abroad, the fact that we have a member of the Japanese media here with us, monitoring not just this press conference, but the upcoming general elections, tell you we're large and in charge. We are Jamaica, even if some people don't know that once you're born here, you're a Jamaican. Sorry for that, Nika. On the foreign affairs front, even while we were a colony of the British Empire, and South Africa was also a part of the British Empire, Norman Manley, then Premier, took the stand based on principle, human dignity, and individual nobility, which everybody, as Christians, we believe, everyone is born to be respected, to have access to dignity and their own nobility. That's our primary principle. We also are the party of social justice. And there is a concept that says, if one person is denied justice, then all humanity is denied justice. So our stance then as a colony against apartheid, or apartheid if you prefer, has always been the foundation phenotype, or the foundation symbol of our approach to the global family. The question about China, Jamaica was one of the earliest countries to have established diplomatic relations with China. We have exceptionally good diplomatic relations with Japan. I could even mention my own dear friend Karen Gibbs, who is a teacher of English in your native land. Jamaicans are, well, the very concept of the word diaspora. Jamaicans are a traveling people, and wherever we go, we establish good relations in those countries. Our motto also speaks out of many one people, which we could elevate as a global standard. So the question regarding the United States, apart from the homeland, most Jamaicans live in the United States. It's a dear, that nation is a dear friend of Jamaica, a mentor over many generations, a symbol of families going there to help families here. As a high school student, some of my textbooks came from Uncle Cecil. Some of my school supplies came from Auntie Paulette, Auntie Sybil, Auntie Rita, and I could go on, to also include those relatives in Canada. I am a reflection of the average Jamaican. So I know that when I express these words, all Jamaica understands. Now, in families, you have what is called a middle child. The middle child sometimes is closer to the older sibling or closer to the younger sibling. I think Jamaica is the middle child of the global family. We love all our brother and all our sister them with passion, with sincerity, and with principle. So we monitor developments across the globe, and we monitor changes in policy when there are elections or changes in leadership across the globe. We have closer relationships based on the history of our country. So we're members of what was formerly known as the British Commonwealth. We're members of the Organization of American States. We're members of CARICOM, which bears the DNA of Norman Manley. And we are also members of the United Nations. So our foreign affairs approach, when Mark Golding becomes Prime Minister, will be consistent with when Norman Manley was Premier, when Michael Manley was Prime Minister, when P.J. Patterson was Prime Minister, when Portia Simsimila was Prime Minister. As it was with them, it shall be when Mark Golding becomes Prime Minister by 1 p.m., new PM by 1 p.m. on Wednesday. That has a lot of cultural nuances, Mika, so I'll explain it to you after the press conference. The other thing I would just like to say quickly, our Foreign Affairs Minister will not be looking through the job vacancies across the globe to campaign at the public expense for a job in London when they have sworn to the people of Jamaica to be loyal and faithful to the Constitution of Jamaica, to enhance the standards and the policies in the global sphere on behalf of Jamaica, like what we've seen recently when one Kamina Johnson-Smith, in the midst of families trying to get our students from Ukraine, when that war started, she was busily campaigning to become the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. So Jamaicans here and abroad and foreign nationals everywhere can look to Jamaica, small as we are, not just when our flag flies high on the medal podiums at international track meets, or when they hear the song One Love by Bob Marley, or as many people refer to our anthem as Jamaica Boom. In Jamaica, and certainly in the People's National Party, are conscious patriots who understand internationalism and that we live in a global world, a global family, where all countries, despite wealth, despite how long they've been sovereign, and some that are still colonies, are entitled to respect and honor based on principles. And I must use this opportunity to say to you, as a Jamaican, speaking to you as a Japanese, that the assistance through public aid, taxpayers in Japan, that your government has provided to Jamaica over many years is greatly appreciated and has always been dutifully applied. And we will continue in that regard.
Thank you very much.
All right, if there are no other questions, Cleveland, you, sir, by an earlier coin toss, have the closing remarks.
Thank you, Raymond, and thank you to all Jamaicans who have tuned in. We are very excited for what will unfold on election day. We are very confident that the people of Jamaica will choose change. And in choosing change, they will elect the People's National Party. So on Wednesday, Jamaica has a choice between desperation and dedication, between last-minute promises and costed, rushed initiatives that will not benefit the people in any tangible or real way, and people-centered plans. We are ready. The People's National Party is ready. Mark Jefferson Golding is ready. And most importantly, Jamaica is ready for a government that puts people first. We shall see you at the polls. Put your X beside the head. Vote for the People's National Party. Thank you.
And on Wednesday, X beside the head, and we'll talk again on Thursday.
For your family and for Jamaica.
On the stage, but we might want
Right
to
here.
do a press conference on Thursday to just say
Thank you.
to the voters across the country.
We should evening for our national broadcast at 8 p.m. on Television Jamaica. You will hear from the party leader, you will hear from other spokespersons, and we will remind you of what is at stake in this election, what the policies and programs being offered are to improve your standard of living.